Welcome back to MMA Al Dente. I am the guy who picked Paul Varelans to defeat Marco Ruas. And I'm here to talk about CJ Vergara versus Vinicius Salvador. Salvador is 27 years old, 14-5 as a pro, and he's got 1 inch of height and 2.5 inches of reach over 32-year-old Vergara, who is 11-4-1 as a pro. CJ Vergara, he is one of my favorite types of fighters. Just a guy who's not such a great athlete, but he's got every fucking intangible in the book, aside from, maybe durability. I mean, he's never been knocked out, but he certainly looks vulnerable. But he's got heart, grit, and cardio. Those are like my 3 favorite traits in a fighter. They all get kind of conflated, but they're totally different traits. You need cardio and heart, really, to have the grit, but grit is the most important, and this guy has it, CJ Vergara. We've seen him in the UFC a few times now, and that grit's been on full display every time. Most impressively against Daniel Lacerda. Daniel was knocking him around early, smashing him, had him running sprints, and really came very close to getting a finish. And CJ Vergara kept himself in the fight, partially by running away and whatever, but he kept himself in the fight and lived the fight another round, as the expression goes, I think. And in that round, in the second round, he beat the shit out of Daniel. Beat the shit out of him, overwhelmed him on the ground, and got him out of there deep in round 2. It was, I believe, a hometown victory, based on the way the crowd was cheering. I'm assuming it was. And it was just an incredible moment for CJ Vergara. He also showed a lot of grit in his victory over Clayton Rodriguez. Clayton is just really getting going in the UFC, and he doesn't even have the prettiest record, but I think a lot of that guy's a fighter. And I think in a fight with CJ Vergara, Clayton wins 90 whatever percent of the time. But CJ Vergara put himself in the realm of winning a decision there, and it's because he didn't stop scratching and clawing. He didn't stop. And he also, this is something I mentioned last time, and it's something he landed in the Clayton Rodriguez fight. He's got very tricky knees to the body. They found him success against Clayton Rodriguez, gave him his biggest moments there in that fight. He also found some success against Ode Osborne, even though that was a losing effort. And it got him his victory over Bruno Correa on the Contender Series, which got him into the UFC in the first place. So seeing knees to the body work well for him in 3 consecutive fights, yeah, that means it's a trait of his. And I think here, if he finds himself dirty fighting with Vinicius Salvador in the clinch, you can expect to see those knees to the body. He's got a lot of heart, a lot of grit, a lot of cardio, CJ Vergara, but he is vulnerable. Definitely vulnerable. That Daniel Lacerda fight did not look good. He was knocked down in that fight, knocked around, and certainly looked pretty vulnerable. He also was knocked down by this guy Jacob Silva, who he ended up getting out of there in round 3. But the guy Jacob Silva, fight, I think it was in the LFA or whatever, I don't know, but it's on Fight Pass. He dropped him very early in the fight and then had some good success beating him up, standing against the cage and whatever. And Vergara ended up living to fight another round again, and then dropped him and then dropped him again and ended up putting him away. But still, it's a strike against his vulnerability, which, whatever, I can't ignore. He's been tapped twice and decision twice. Lost to good fighters. Tatsuro Taira armbarred him, of course. Ode Osborne beat him by decision. This other guy rear naked choked him, Devin Miller. That was not a great look. He was just, taken down and strangled in inside of a minute, I think. It was very textbook. And his other decision loss, way back in his career, goes to Jonathan Martinez. And that was a split decision. So, no shame in that. But, yeah, I'm sure he's always been a scrappy fighter, CJ Vergara. And he's got a lot of great traits, but he's still pretty vulnerable. Vinicius Salvador is the kind of guy that could expose that vulnerability. He's got 14 wins, 13 of them via knockout, just 1 via submission, and 0 decisions. He's a very violent son of a bitch. We've seen him knock out Shannon Ross, and that's, to be honest, his best victory, Shannon Ross. And Shannon Ross has only looked chinnier and chinnier as his career has progressed, although I think it might be done progressing, to be honest. But still, he hasn't fought the best competition, Vinicius Salvador. In, I think, 2 of his last 4 fights are against guys making their MMA debuts. And that's where this guy has already 15 fights. and he's knocking out guys with 0-0 records. This one guy, Vampirino, Little Vampire, unless that's his last name, I don't know. But guys that shouldn't be in the cage with somebody like Salvador, and they end up getting in the cage, and they only serve to pad his record. So I'm aware that it's not, the best 14-5 record, but still, I am also aware that it's no coincidence he knocked those guys out. He's a very dangerous knockout artist, Vinicius Salvador. You can see when he throws, he's kind of like a very, very small Alex Pereira. No, he's not that, but he's still very fucking dangerous. On the flip side, he's been beaten 5 times, and 3 of them are via finish, just 2 via decision. Jafel Filo got him out of there with a TKO in round 2. I haven't seen that fight, but I feel like it could have happened on the ground, based on the way Filo's looked. I've seen his one knockout loss in which he was legitimately knocked out. That was this guy, Ella Frank something, but that was a big overhand right. I mean, he hit a beautiful combination on Vinicius and then sat him dead with a right hand. So it was a brutal knockout, to be honest. And then he was submitted by this guy, Rafael Costa, with an arm triangle in round 2. I saw that one. And of course, Victor Altamirano beat him in his last fight. Beat him by decision. I thought Salvador won round 2, but in general, he was outgunned, outpointed, outvolumed, outwrestled. I thought Altamirano proved to be the better fighter. And here, I've got to be honest, I'm siding with Salvador. I think he's got a lot of vulnerabilities, sure, but I think he's very dangerous, and I think he's better at... I think he's a better striker overall, but I think he's better at fighting longer. He's got 2.5 inches of reach, and again, he's got little bricks in his hands, and I think he's going to end up beating CJ Vergara up on the outside. He's always going to have to worry about CJ Vergara's pressure, and again, CJ Vergara rips those shots to the body and whatever. But I've got Salvador's power carrying him to a victory here. I think he's going to be the first person to get CJ Vergara out of there, but once it happens, we're going to go, kind of knew that was an inevitability. And that's the pick. Vinicius Salvador, I want to see his prop bets, of course, because I'm pretty sure it'll be by knockout, but those odds might not be so great. In the meantime, I bet on him at plus 130. I think there's value on Vinicius Salvador. And I'll tell you this, for CJ Vergara, if you want to hedge, or if you're looking to bet on CJ Vergara in the first place, and especially if you're looking to play props, play rounds 2 and 3, and play rounds 2 and 3 TKO. If those are even somewhat juicy, even I'll play them. And I'm still not sure, but I'm strongly leaning towards Salvador in this fight. But CJ Vergara, with all the traits he has, and with Vinicius Salvador's vulnerabilities, a late TKO would not surprise me. Again, I haven't seen that Jafel Filo fight in round 2, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was even a comeback, and certainly it wouldn't surprise me if it was on the ground, because that's where I expect it to be. So, yeah, I will look into that, because I know and trust the traits of CJ Vergara. But as far as the pick and the bet go, the primary bet, Vinicius Salvador getting it done. I think he's a guy that's dangerous enough to finally crack that chin of Vergara, and I'm betting on him at plus 130. Like, share, subscribe, all that horse shit. Check out my other videos.